He was good. Got through practice, no issues. So, guess tomorrow will be a better day to evaluate if there's any stiffness, soreness. But we're off tomorrow anyway, so he'll get some rest and get ready to go for Wednesday.
Are you looking for anything out there at practice? Like you just kind of just know that that's going to be sweating.
Yeah, I mean, we monitor, Matt, their heart rates too, so the workload. So we're looking probably a little closer at that than maybe we would have in the middle of the year. Draw some comparables so we make sure we don't get too high. But no, just some pace. Guys seem to have they have good life out there. They're workers, so they want to work. We just don't want to overdo it and leave it out there. I think some guys stayed out yesterday a long time, probably. In fact, they had 2 days off. They want to get back at it. So just workload and kind of pace is what I'm looking at.
Team-wise, I'm sure you don't have a preference on who you want to face in the final. But do you hope now that it's Grade 2 St. Louis that series ends a little earlier so you can catch St. Louis on a little bit of rest as well?
I don't have a strong opinion on that, honestly. You're right. If St. Louis wins, then they got a 6-day break, so they'll go through some of the rust part. If it goes 7, they bang each other up a little more, so there's probably positives on both sides. So we get who we get, and we just got to make sure it's more about us getting ready, and we're kind of in the process of doing that now.
Heinen hasn't been scoring a ton, but he's playing at a pretty high level. What's the key been for him to keep his confidence up when the points aren't necessarily?
Well, we're winning, Steve, and he's playing his minutes, right? I mean, he's not maybe as high as 16, but I'm sure he's averaging like a lot of his line mates, 12 to 14, somewhere in there. There's a group of forwards that are around that. I think the Crowley line certainly has gone up in the playoffs. We've used him a little more in opening games and a penalty kill, but Danton's getting his minutes. So I think a player just knows he's contributing in some way, shape, or form. That usually keeps your confidence. I think he'd look at the scoring more if it was in season, because you get judged a little bit by that a little more. Now it's about, are you winning at the end of the day? And he's doing his part, so I don't think it bothers him as much. I'm sure he'd like to chip in a little more, but I think he's been fine that way.
Bruce, you mentioned during the playoffs several times after games that the analytics will confirm or give you some insight on player performance. So you have access to bigger and cleaner data now than you've ever had in your coaching career. How has that taught you, eliminated things or confirmed things?
Well, that's it. It does confirm things. That's the first thing, the eye test. You're seeing what the data is telling you. I think coaches look at that a lot. We're stubborn a little bit. We like to trust our eyes. I think that's what analytics is good for. It'll give you a non-biased opinion. Now, some analytics is put together where you got to ask some questions. To me, that's my issues with analytics. It's generated from a spot. Was the goalie in the net when that happened? What was the situation, as opposed to just a shot coming from there? And I think you have to dive into that a little more some days. But for me, I like looking at data and then use it accordingly. I don't get married to, well, we let so many controlled entries, which is much higher than normal. We got to make sure we're, but you do have to use certain points of it to reinforce the things you're teaching. I don't think you can use every bit of data or you drive yourself crazy. But I think it's relevant for certain things. And I think every coach would tell you they probably slant one way or the other on what they're going to use it for, offensively, defensively, special teams. Assistant coaches, I think it's real relevant for their area because they are a little more dialed in specifics. Like Jay, how many rebound chances are we getting? He likes to do the ozone stuff. So we went from, I think at the start of the year, we were certainly like 25th or 28th in the league, and I think we climbed all the way to, 12th, 10th, 15th. We moved up quite a bit. So he's pretty excited about that because that's his area, right? So, then in the PK, PP, I think it comes in handy. Are you getting clean entries? Your eye test might tell you are. The data, might tell you differently. So, like I said, I'm kind of giving you a roundabout answer, but I do believe to each his own. I like the data, but I'm never going to go into the locker room one day and say, we had 16 controlled entries last game and, against 20, I don't think the players give a crap about those raw numbers. That's more for us backing up, what we're teaching and, how we're executing.
Have you learned anything? You think one way based on the eye test of the
I
years?
do believe the teams that control the slot battle, and I think that's eye test too, but the numbers really back that up, win the majority of the games. I think for me, it's you keep them out of the prime scoring area, you get to the prime scoring area, that's a big determinator. 5-on-5, obviously. There's the intangibles, but so we constantly look at that area. And that's going back to Jay, but, because he was harping on that, the rebound chances. That means you're getting inside. I guess that's the term, right? Getting inside. We had trouble last year with Tampa. This year we've been better. I thought we did a good job against Carolina, keeping them to the outside. And, whether you saw it the same way when you're watching the game, I do believe is one of the reasons we didn't give up a ton of goals. Obviously, Tuukka was another, but specifically on their power play.
Is there anything in the past, coaches probably just wanted to have their voice, and that was to maybe exclude a lot of other outside voices. But in today's game, especially yourself, it seems like no, the more information, maybe away from analytics, but the more information, more voices we can have, whether it's the GM, the president, the veteran group. How does that help you at this point?
Well, okay, the negative of that is the mixed messaging, right? If everyone's sending a different message, then sometimes as a coach, you're like, well, hey, listen, we just talked about this, you talked about that. So that's where you can get off course. I think we've been pretty good at talking about, what we need to talk about. I think that's been passed on to our leadership group. I think they echo the message of the coaching staff and vice versa. We'll take stuff from Bergie and Z, and it's like, hey, we need to be this next game. It's like, all right, I'll buy into that, Bergie. Let's make sure that's the message from the staff as well. So we kind of coexist there. I mean, obviously, we have the final say as coaches. As for the outside, the analytics, what are you talking about? Or are you talking about social media or the scribes that are writing stories, or where are you going with this?
No, as far as, like maybe the GM-coach relationship, because, GM could be, all right, this is what I want you to do, but coach be like, well, I've got final say. But how
Well, you're never, yeah. I mean, I think Donnie and I have always been on the same page, but you're going to have days you're going to have disagreements on how we're going to get to that, maybe end result. I think that's human nature when you work together and you're both invested. So, but for us, we've been on the same message from day one. So we want to obviously win. It's a results-oriented business, but we wanted to improve the pace of play of the team, still being harder to play against. We wanted to incorporate some of the young talent we drafted. I mean, you draft this skill. Let's see how it fits. Do we have to change our game? Yes, we did have to a little bit without losing our identity. And I think the Bruins have always been a solid defensive team. I still think we're the best defensive team left in the playoffs. St. Louis and San Jose may argue that, and we've still scored goals. We've tinkered with our special teams. I think our power play has improved and gotten better over the years. So there's like certain areas you can maybe differentiate from, but I still think that's our identity, and we're on the exact same page there when it comes to how we want to get there.
Sorry, I'll jump in. What about, when you talk about your defense, what about the Chara McAvoy pairing made sense for you this season, them together, and what do they kind of, they look so different, from an outside perspective, but why does it work, I guess?
Well, I think they complement each other. I think at first when Charlie came into the league, he was leaning on Z for a lot of ability to put out fires that maybe Charlie created because he didn't know the league as well, what he could get away with, what he couldn't. And then as it went along, I think it tilts the other way too. Now Z's relying on Charlie some nights when they're trying to play behind Z. He's trying to have a good gap, and they're chipping behind him, Charlie, to break the puck out and help him in that, so he's not always turning, facing the glass. So I think they've evolved into knowing what the strength of each other is and allowing them to play to that. And they're both good players. I think when you put two good players together that have the passion they do or the will to win, then they're going to coexist. They're going to find a way to coexist, and that's the way it's kind of worked out for them. And I think Z is a mentor. Saw it with Carlo the year before, and Charlie's receptive to that. He's got a lot of respect for the older guys in the room. Yet he's still himself, and I think that's the key. These young guys that come in and defer will have a tougher time. If you play to your strength, but take what the veteran player is telling you, but still play to your game. And that's what happened with Carlo. He deferred a little more, but he still played his shutdown game. Different player than Charlie, but I think it worked out well the year before. And that's why at the start of the year we thought, well, do we go back to Z and Carlo and maybe Charlie move him somewhere else? But I think it's worked out, really well for us.
Getting back to the data thing for a second, I imagine the slot battle is something you always felt was pretty important and pretty significant. Is there anything that having access to all that and sort of getting familiar and comfortable with it, that it fundamentally changed the way you viewed something, its importance, your stance on it, that kind of thing?
Probably the neutral zone defense. I was always want to protect the blue line, but maybe not as aggressively as we do now, because the data kind of showed us that more offensive opportunities or better offensive opportunities come when you have control of the puck going over the blue line. That's teams build their team around. Like, I think Toronto's that good example of that. They want to attack off the rush chances, far outweigh maybe forecheck or ozone chances. So if you can defend the blue line, not let them in there clean, that's when I watch every day to make sure we're stubborn there. Now, some of that will depend on how, if you're turning the puck over all night in the neutral zone, that'll skew the numbers. But on an average night, are we defending the blue line well? How many controlled entries? So I've looked at that one a little closer, more so in the last, say, 3 years than I would have 10 years ago.
Bruce, if you kind of dumb it down from the analytics to the TV type of story, just if you thought I looked outside, it's 76 degrees today, and the fact that you guys are still playing hockey.
Well, it's nice to go to work this time of year, get up and go to work. Someone texts me, you get some family time, golf. No, I want to go to work this time of the year. I think that's why we're in this profession. We'll have all summer to golf or do this or that. So for me, there's only 2, 3, going to be 2 teams doing it. So there is a little bit, I was envious of teams in the past that were able to work this time of year, and I'm sure it's the same way. You want to be the king of the hill, right? So for me, it's fine. It's great. We get some time off this week, so guys can still, what is it supposed to be tomorrow for the TV guys out there? Is it going to be still 76 or not? So guys will have fun. Probably get away from the rink, but still, we've told them actually, you got to be selfish with your time as well this time of year, because you got a lot of people now that want to, kind of catch up. So I do believe you still got to stay focused, but the weather and everything that's going on, you'd drive yourself crazy if it was hockey 24 hours a day. So I think guys are able to balance that.
In any job, whether it's sports or outside of sports, it's often said there's no teacher like losing that job. What did you learn from your first go-around, and how are you different in your second go-around? And it took a while because of myself and get back in.
Yeah, mine was a long time ago. So to be honest with you, all I learned was I'm a lot more comfortable in my own skin now than I was then. I was young. I hadn't had really no NHL experience. I was up in Chicago for bits and pieces. So you walk into an NHL locker room. To me, there was still a little bit of awe in that whole, there's Jagger, there's Gonchar, these guys that have been around. So it probably took me a while to just walk in there and say, be comfortable. This is what we're doing today. Have the confidence and still be a good communicator while you're doing that. So I think I've learned over the years to, sort of have that mentality a little bit more. And then, listen, you're around the game for an extra 15 years. You're going to learn stuff. It's just different ways to communicate, different ways to see the game. How do you delegate? How do you use your staff? How do you use your top-end players to, help you find that common goal? So I think that was the biggest difference. It was just a lot of newness back then. This time around, there's a little more experience at this level.
And did having Bergeron in the room help?
Well, I've talked about that a lot. Like the leadership, I don't want to disparage the other one, so let's stick with this one here. I think this leadership group is second to none, and I don't know if I'll ever have, wherever this career takes me, a group like this to work with. And I've said that since probably the second week on the job here, that those guys are fantastic, and they sure make a coach's job a lot easier.
Last one, Mike. Bruce, on defense. So Krug and Carlo, when you had to replace Z for game, you had to replace Charlie. You made it a point to keep Krug and Carlo together. What does that say about their play reports to the team that it's more important to have that consistency?
Well, they've been dynamite for us. I think Torrey's been a little bit underappreciated this playoff with his ability to defend. To be quite honest, you're always going to get the power play, acumen from him. He's going to make his breakout passes, but he's taken a lot of pride in playing on the other side of the puck. A lot. If you watch video, he's boxing out big guys every night, committed to that. He's not leaving the zone early. He's making sure the puck's, going out of the zone before he is. All the little things that make you a good defensive defenseman, the commitment to stay in the battle, have been excellent. Brando, we know, is going to give us that part. So where Brando's committed is, I think he's, with no experience, we weren't sure if it was how that was going to be with him. Is he going to get nervous? And I think after game one, he's been great at just calm solid hockey. So I guess splitting those guys up, you could help each. But, you know, for me, it was more about, you know what, for one game, if we were losing those guys for 2 weeks, we'd have to consider that long and hard. For a game here or there, the guys have it in them to, you know, suck it up and play an extra, you know, 5-6 minutes, whatever it has to be on a particular night.
I mean, you've had forward lines that, you know, as they develop, say, like, I'll play them against anybody. I mean, some, obviously you'll want matchups, but I mean, you don't get it, you know, with those guys.
No, we're okay. What we like about Krug now is we put him, so you got Matthews on one line, Marner on another, so you're kind of like, where do you want Z? So with Matthews Marner being a smaller guy, Krug, that's where he's got to say, Torrey, you got to be able to accept this challenge. And then the next round, it's say Aho and Teravainen, because you probably want Z against Stahl and Williams and Svechnikov, a bigger line, right? So you go down the list, or he's okay against Panarin and Atkinson, and people say, well, wow, those are, you know, and he handled it. So Z got to take Duchesne, who's kind of a load below the goal line, and Foligno's of the world. So we got to balance it out. And if without Torrey being able to accept those challenges, we're in a bit of trouble. Then maybe you got to move Grizz up, and that screws up your pairs. So, like I said, I got a lot of praise for Torrey in this playoffs for the way he's defended and accepted whatever line he's up against. It's allowed us to really balance our pairs and match up a lot better.
Thanks, everyone.
Good plan. Happy birthday.
Thank you.